Hello and welcome to June's Business About Protein seminar. My name is Lane Clark, and I'm the Senior Corporate Engagement Manager Innovation at the Good Food Institute. I'm located in Raleigh, North Carolina, and it's my pleasure to welcome everyone to today's event. We'll take a deep dive into alternative seafood today with Marissa Bronfman, who we're very lucky to have with us. She's the founder and executive director of Future Ocean Foods. She'll be leading a panel discussion featuring leaders in the alternative protein space, and then we'll have a chance for all of you to get your questions answered. And first, for those of you who may be new to the work of the Good Food Institute, we're an international nonprofit organization that is developing the roadmap for a sustainable, secure, and just protein supply. We identify the most effective solutions, mobilize resources and talent, and empower partners across the food system to make alternative proteins accessible, affordable, and delicious. Before we get started, I have a few housekeeping items. First, this seminar will be recorded and posted to our YouTube channel, and we'll be emailing everyone who has registered a copy of the recording. And second, after the panel, there will be time for audience Q&A. Please ask your questions in the Q&A box versus the chat. This helps us keep track of them more easily. Feel free to ask questions at any point. We'll be collecting them along the way, and we may respond to some questions in writing throughout the seminar. And we'll have 15 minutes or so at the end to address the remainder. And so with that, it's my pleasure to hand things over to our moderator, Marissa Bronfman, who is the founder and executive director of Future Ocean Foods. She'll tell you a little bit about her organization and also introduce our panelists, all of whom bring deep experience in alternative seafood.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for that intro, Lane. I consider the Good Food Institute to be really the most important and impactful organization shaping the future of food. So I'm very honored to have them as our partner at Future Ocean Foods. I'm a serial entrepreneur, advisor, coach, writer, speaker, and mentor. And as she mentioned, the founder and executive director of Future Ocean Foods. We are the world's first and only alternative seafood association. We have over 45 members in more than 16 countries across plant-based, fermentation, and cultivated food and technology. Our mission is to support and accelerate the alternative seafood industry worldwide to promote food security, human health, environmental sustainability, and ocean conservation. If you are interested in learning more, please visit our website, futureoceanfoods.org. Feel free to email me, marissa@futureoceanfoods.org, or send me a message on LinkedIn. As you all know, it is a critical time for our planet and specifically for our oceans and the sentient beings within them and around them. And a few things that make this a critical thing to talk about today. We've got over 3 billion people looking to seafood as their primary protein source. There's going to be over 10 billion people on the planet by 2050. In the next 5 years, the global seafood industry is projected to surpass $600 billion. But unfortunately, it's also projected there will be no fish left in the sea by 2049. So obviously, this is a hugely important topic, and I am so honored that 4 incredible global leaders in alternative seafood are here today. We've got lots of great things to talk about and really looking forward to it. So I'd like to introduce the panelists. Please welcome Brittany Chibi. She is the co-founder and CGO of Aquacultured Foods. Brittany, thank you so much for being here. Sonia Ortado, co-founder and CEO of Poseidona. Dennis Ficiciolo. She is the founder and CEO of Betafish. And last but certainly not least, a true pioneer and leader in the space, Yves Potvin, founder and CEO of Conscious Foods, and many other incredible plant-based businesses that we all know and love and probably eat regularly. Thank you all so much for being here.
Great pleasure.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody. So Yves, let's start with you. As I mentioned, you are a true pioneer in the space. You have really been working on alternative proteins for about 4 decades. In the 80s, you built Yves Veggie Cuisine, and then Gardein 20 years later, and most recently, Conscious Foods. You have built and sold those businesses through a variety of economic highs and lows. Of course, as we all know, this is a very difficult economic climate right now. I'm curious what your predictions are for the next 5 to 10 years for conventional seafood and seafood analogs. And before you share that with us, why did you choose alternative seafood for your latest company?
Thank you, Marissa. In about 2 years ago, we decided to put the team together, create a new company, Conscious, and all the employees have share in Conscious, and that's one of the reasons I'm doing it, to put the team back together. And we sort of look at the white space, and lots of companies are doing chicken nuggets, lots of companies are doing burger. And we all know that in our lifetime, probably there's not going to be any wild fish anymore. It's going to be all cultivated. So we embark on this journey to find a better way to create food that people love and but made from plant-based. And so the fish industry, I think, is growing, but there's a challenge with supply. And so there's a need for a company like us to bring innovation in the marketplace, good product. And I'm very proud to say, of all the protein alternative, I think Conscious is the first one to bring product to the marketplace that is cheaper than the protein that it's trying to replicate. And so, there's always a challenge in the marketplace. People say, oh, why is it 40% more expensive? Well, now you take the price equation away, and now it's about health, it's about sustainability.
I love that, and I've really loved watching the Conscious journey unfold. Your products look so beautiful. I follow along keenly on Instagram. Brittany, you're using fermentation technology at Aquacultured Foods to create sushi-grade fish and other seafood analogs with high-end applications, also a gorgeous Instagram. Why have you chosen to showcase your products with chefs and Michelin-starred restaurants before going to grocery, and what's the demand been like?
Sure. So we initially have decided on food service as our go-to-market channel, but specifically targeting more premium restaurants. And like you said, Marissa, more of those Michelin star or GM Spirit Award-winning chefs. And that's for multiple reasons. One of them being we're focused right now on those really premium cuts of seafood. And so, what you've just mentioned about having an option that is below the price of conventional seafood is incredibly important. And we feel that in order to get consumers to make that shift, there needs to be that price reason. And so, taste is great. This is food. Taste is king. Texture is incredibly important. But to really get people to try something new and make a change in their lifestyle or diet, price is more important than taste. And so we recognize that at our small pilot scale today, the cost to manufacture is more expensive than it will be when we reach a larger commercial scale. And so we want to have a cost competitive product. And so that's why we're focused on these raw applications, specifically with scallops and tuna, because we can launch our products below the price of conventional scallops and tuna today. And so with that, where do you eat scallops and raw tuna? Typically at more fine dining, more premium restaurants. And so we're really focused on targeting those chefs and those restaurants because we know that consumers are frequenting those places looking for solutions like what we're bringing. And so I like to say we want to meet our customer where they are, and that's why we're going after these fine dining establishments.
Such a great idea. And for those people that are here that may not know or aren't intimately aware of fermentation technology, could you briefly describe what that is, how you're using it, and what you see as the future of fermentation in alternative seafood?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, fermentation, I feel like isn't talked a lot about. It's usually like plant-based, cultivated, or that what I think GFI considers that third pillar of alternative protein. And specifically at Aqua, we're using a biomass fermentation. So we have a really, really efficient, really cost-effective way to grow our product. We use more of what I would call a rack and chamber system. And so within a temperature and humidity controlled room, we're able to grow our whole cuts of cellulose using a simple fermentation media. So we're able to brew our media and let our microbes kind of sit in a temp controlled room where they like to grow and thrive. And we're able to grow a whole biomass or a cellulose mat And that cellulose mat is our final product. So we go through a kill step and we're able to cut it, shape it, flavor it, color it, and create those end products for tuna and scallops. And in terms of the future of fermentation, I think we're only touching the surface of what is possible. I really think that this is an area in alt protein that's going to continue to grow and thrive. And I think it's, you know, we love plant-based products, we need them. And same with cultivated, right? We need that. But I think when I think about fermentation and why it's so exciting and why it's so important and why it's going to grow is because the technology is here and now, it's ready. In terms of regulatory, we can get these products approved and get them in the market very soon. And when it comes to labeling, the products are incredibly clean. So when I think about our scallops, there's 3 ingredients. It's water, cellulose, and then the natural flavors that we add. So we're kind of checking all those boxes in terms of what consumers are looking for. And we have the benefit of the price, again, being able to undercut the price of conventional seafood.
Thank you for sharing that. Such an exciting time for fermentation. Love that both you and Yves have talked about that clean label approach to the future of seafood. We've seen a lot of business to consumer businesses struggling in the last couple of years. Sonia Poseidana is a B2B company providing a clean, sustainable protein from invasive seaweed and algal side streams, which can be used to make seafood analogs and other kinds of future food products. So I'd say a double win for the ocean. What opportunities do you see for B2B alt seafood companies in the next few years, and how can they overcome some of the barriers that B2C counterparts have struggled with?
Yeah, so I clearly see that we have a huge advantage being B2B because we are not only providing to alternative seafood companies, but also to other segments and being, I don't know, meat analogs or even bread, other segments. And this means that we can start introducing seaweeds, new ingredients through these other channels. So the consumer will get used to that. And this way they will be more open to then embrace new concepts for seafood, right? So I think on that hand, we have a huge advantage. And then of course, and following what Kimberly was just saying, we have to keep the label clean as possible. We have to provide a nutritionally packed final product. So as B2B ingredients company, we have to be able to provide these ingredients that allow this end product. And of course, and most of all, the price point. So we have to keep the cost as low as possible. Otherwise, they cannot sell the product. So I would say these are the main things.
Thanks for sharing. And price point has come up from everyone so far, and we'll definitely talk about it more later on in this hour. Dennis, you're using seaweed at Betta Fish to create seafood analogs, and you've had great success with retail and partnerships. You are in talks with German cultivated seafood company Blue to explore creating hybrid products together. We know that cultivated seafood, due to extremely high startup costs and regulatory red tape, has a much longer path to market than plant-based. So why explore hybrid? And what is your prediction for analogs across plant-based, cultivated, and hybrid over the next 5 to 10 years?
Yeah, good question. So, I mean, as you know, we are experts in plant-based seafood and plant-based fish. We've been developing our plant-based tuna for the past 3 years. Now, recently, we added the salmon. So I myself, I'm no expert in cultivated seafood, but I think the space is extremely exciting and important to move forward, to push the whole space. And I believe that in the end, we will have a mix of solutions that will help our oceans heal and conserve our oceans in the future. What we've learned over the past 3 years mainly is how exciting seaweed and the different seaweed species can be in terms of adding a lot of flavor to our products, natural flavor. We've heard the clean label. We've heard about talking about clean label before. So seaweed is exceptional in recreating those ocean flavors as a clean label ingredient. And we want to pass on this experience and share this with cultivated seafood companies such as Blue, because this is one of the major things they've been, not just them, but in general, the industry has been struggling with, to find flavors that are exciting to customers, that are natural and that don't stick in your throat for 2 days with some of the artificial aromas that are out there. And I think so the whole hybrid thing has been in the news and been talked about a couple of years back already, and then kind of it faded away again. But I see that a lot of people are picking this up again now. Because a lot of like the costs are rising, the costs for feed are rising. There are certain diseases that people are struggling with. So people are looking more into this option of actually combining animal version of fish with plant-based fish. And I think we'll see a lot more products like this out there soon.
I agree, and I'm excited to see what comes of that partnership. Yves, what are the biggest misconceptions about alternative seafood from consumers and retailers? And what strategies have been most effective for Conscious Foods in gaining market acceptance for your new products? Also curious which demographics seem to be more inclined to choose alternative seafood.
So your first question again was?
Yes, it's a question about the biggest misconceptions about alternative seafood.
Okay, yeah. So, you know, I talked to somebody. It's not only alternative seafood; it's alternative protein in general. That it's processed, it's over processed, and you know, there's regulation in the U.S. and Canada that you have to fortify your product. So when you put vitamin A, you put the chemical name beside it. When you put the vitamin C, you put and a lot of perception from people, they think it's all chemical. So I think that's the biggest challenge from people. They see that plant-based is over processed, but our product is not a process. It's really an assemblage of product ingredient that we put together. And so there's an education component, definitely. I would say the younger consumer, because we are really in the healthy, convenient food that is, you know, have alternative protein, fish protein in, but not all our product are an alternative to protein. Or line of onigiri is just plant-based. And what was the third question? Sorry, Marissa.
No problem. I'm curious what demographics, I think you just mentioned this, you're finding that younger people are
younger people, I think, are, because they're a lot into snacking, and we all know that younger people vote with their mouth, that they feel that the environment is very important, and the action they take right now will have an effect 50 years from now when they're still going to be living on a planet. So I think they're more aware of the impact they can have on the environment.
I agree. And that's a good segue into health and nutrition. I think there's been a growing awareness that seafood products contain microplastics. That's probably the biggest headline when it comes to seafood. We're also talking about antibiotics, disease, never mind marine destruction and animal welfare issues. But still, there seems to be this thing that we call the health halo around seafood. So people think that by choosing conventional seafood, they're choosing the healthier, cleaner, and potentially more sustainable protein. And part of what they're looking for is protein, and part of what they're looking for is omegas. So Yves, you just touched on that. Some of your products, I think you said, you know, have a protein component. Some are just plant-based. I'm curious, Yves and Dennis, how would you talk about your plant-based products as it relates to the conventional species that perhaps you're trying to recreate, be it tuna, salmon, or otherwise? Dennis, what?
Yeah, that's a very good question, Marissa. I mean, I think there's an overconsumption of protein, and that's the number one question we have. Does it has omega-3? Does it has protein? We're about a third of the level of traditional salmon, but you have to say that, like, there's no plastic, there's no mercury, there's no cholesterol, there's no antibiotic, and we know that farm salmon, the feed that they feed the salmon is not necessarily the healthiest feed. So there's a welfare cost, there's all that kind of cost. So I think you have to sell the benefit of what you have. It's gluten-free, it's environmentally friendly, and it's less expensive. But at the end of the day, you know, we won a FABI award. We won also a taste award at the F&B show for the cruise ship. If the product delivers on taste, and the product is versatile, and the product is it's good for you, it's good for the planet, and most important, it tastes good, I think it's a question of education, and we will win the battle.
I certainly hope so. Dennis?
Yeah, I have to agree with you that like at least from a German-speaking country perspective, where we're mostly distributing our products, and that fish still has this health halo. So people are aware of all the negative effects of microplastics, all the heavy metals, etc. But they still consume fish because they think it's healthy. So we see also a lot the reaction with, for example, retailers is that there's no demand for that, so they're very hesitant in listing alternative fish products. But in terms of how Germany is slowly picking it, like following up, like we are very behind compared to the US or the UK, I would say. There has been a huge trend of all these high protein products for a year now. And people are starting to look into this. They're starting to look into supplements and what does the food actually do they're consuming. So for us, this is super exciting because as we're using seaweed as one of the main components, it's finally time for us to highlight this component. Whereas in the past, we've actually not mentioned that dominantly that we're using seaweed because it's so far from what people eat every day. But now it's really the time to shine for these new ingredients and these more diverse ingredients in the plant-based food sector, such as seaweed, highlighting that it's high in macronutrients and iodine and fibers, all these things that people are missing in their daily diets and now actively seek to add. In terms of protein, we also have products with high protein source. It's still not matching the animal version of what we are copying, but still it's already high protein. So this trend kind of feeds into our growth, which is nice. But I'm a bit cautious, like for how long is it gonna last? And as Eve mentioned, products also need to convince and taste. That's what we are seeing. It doesn't necessarily need to look one-to-one like the original, but it does need to convince and taste. Otherwise, people would just buy it once and not twice.
Yeah, taste is definitely king, and price seems to be king as well, especially in this climate. This is a question for all of you. What are the biggest technical challenges facing the production of alternative seafood, and how are you addressing them? So across plant-based and fermentation, what are some of the biggest challenges to scale? I'll pick Sonia.
I would say, well, Sonia, go ahead.
Sure.
Okay, so yeah, I think maybe not, but I would say that we all will agree that scaling up it's the most challenging thing in all the areas. So we are doing ingredients, and of course, we already know that we are going to have the huge challenge there when we start scaling up more and more and more. And I would say it's the same for the final product as well, because I experienced that in the past. But I don't know, do you agree with me?
Well, I think for me, scaling up is the key component of any successful business. So, Marissa, you mentioned my two previous venture. The difference between what I've done in the past, what I'm doing now, I own my own facility, my own machinery. We have 35,000. So, and really, you refine a product when you grow up and when you scale up in production. That's the only way to fine tune and improve a product. And the challenge, if you have a third party making your product, it's very difficult to do that. So I believe strongly it's very capital intensive. You need a lot of money, but only the strong will survive in this business, and the one who will survive will be the one who have their own manufacturer, I believe.
Yeah, I think the it's sort of like I hear this from all the founders I talk to is you figure out how to make your products at the bench, right? It's lab scale, it works great. Let's go to the next phase. You get to pilot and everything breaks. And you have to figure out how to rebuild it again. And that's super time intensive. And then what's the right equipment? To your point, Yves, it's incredibly expensive. And when you think about the macro environment we're in right now, it's so different than where we were 2 or 3 years ago, where people were raising money to put steel in ground and build these manufacturing facilities. That money simply isn't available anymore. And so we have to get really creative about how we grow and scale. And so from Aqua's standpoint, we have taken the approach of using existing equipment. So what can we find in the marketplace today? What techniques and processes can we learn from other industries and implement that into our process? So we're looking at, how does the brewing industry work, or dairy, or what can we learn and what takeaways can we bring into our process in order to help us scale? And so I always say we're building the plane while we're flying it. It's like we're producing a pilot, we're getting product in the market, but we're still figuring everything out further upstream. And so you just have to do what works for you, knowing that things are going to break, things are going to fail, you're going to rebuild, and you'll be better for it. And you're going to learn so much about your product and process along that way. But I agree that the resilient will survive. And I think being really, really careful about how you scale, but also not too slow is really important. So it's like finding that sweet spot. Don't wait too long. And I think the resilient will survive and we'll figure it out.
I like the optimism. Dennis?
Yeah, I like the optimism too. And I also like the idea of using equipment and technology that is already available and out there. This is also what we've been doing the past 3 to 4 years, because we said we can't wait to develop our own machinery. We can't wait to build our own facilities to actually start having impact and start making learnings. So everything that we've designed in the lab at Bench, we then took to existing production partners to scale it with them. And this gave us a lot of speed. Otherwise, we wouldn't have been on the market already for 2 years. And I really like that, because also some of the technologies that are considered new today, like high moisture extrusion, texturized vegetable proteins, they've been around for 30 years, but or 20 years, but they've been waiting for their moment to shine. So sometimes it's not necessarily, we don't need to reinvent the wheel, but we can look into existing technology and maybe repurpose them, or think a little bit different on how to make them use and put them to use. So I'm a huge fan of that, and I don't think we will build our own facility in the near future, but then work with other exciting startups who are creating these technologies and make use of that.
I think right now, the sentiment from investors is they're looking for founders that can be creative and nimble, and I'm really hearing that in this session. I want to talk about environmental impact, but since we're talking about investment and different ways to get scale that may not be capital intensive, I'd like to jump to some questions about investment and also mergers and acquisitions. Like any, sort of down period, we are seeing consolidation in alternative seafood, which isn't necessarily a bad thing. But to continue on with optimism, Sonia, you recently successfully closed a round. Congratulations. Perhaps you could talk about what elements of your business resonated with investors. Why did they choose to invest? And what do you think this signals for the future of alternative seafood investments?
Yeah. Thank you. And I can tell that I think that we were lucky, honestly, because we met the right VC. We met VC that believed in us, and they really were super aligned. And I think in the first meeting that we had, we could tell. I remember in the beginning that the first connections that we had, the first people that I was pitching, I could see they were not so engaged, and possibly it's because they were more related to the plant-based sector, and they used it to invest in plant-based companies. possibly it was because of that. The investor that finally led our round, the one that I'm talking about, they typically invest in the blue space and sustainability related companies, so not specifically in plant-based. So I think that was an advantage for us. And definitely for our pitch, once we started talking more about the sustainability topic in general and not that much about doing plant-based products, I think that helped, definitely.
Another thing that I'm hearing from a lot of investors is, this focus on profitability that wasn't as important a few years ago. Like Brittany was saying, there was a lot of money, there were a lot of big checks,
Yep.
in the previous period. And so can you talk a little bit more about that?
Yeah, 100%. In our case, we are using algae, but we also use side streams from algae. So we are using circular materials, we're using invasive seaweeds. Why? Because this way we can have raw materials that are for free or really in a low cost. And that is allowing us to get a final product cost that is reasonable. Otherwise, it would be skyrocketed and impossible to sell. And I think this was a point that the investors saw with good eyes. And it was different. It was not like, okay, we have this amazing technology that it requires these super specific equipments. No, in our case, it was more, I don't know, we are using enzymes, so definitely we have a biotech and technological point, and we are R&D people, most of the team. So our strength is there, but we were not going for a fancy technology. We are going to use something that was reasonable, easy to apply, fast to apply, and cheap also. And I think that made the success for our round.
That's brilliant. And congratulations again.
Thanks.
Could you speak to us about Conscious's plan for acquisitions? You are on the lookout for acquisitions in the global market. Could you talk a little bit about that strategy?
Yes, we've talked to different private equity, investment group, family office, and the appetite right now is not so much to invest in plant-based business, but like any business cycle in different time, there's a time for consolidation that maybe you bring 3 or 4 business that are doing 5 to 8 million together. Yes, everybody has to take a haircut because the valuation is different now than it was, but you have a much better chance of surviving and grow with a 20 to 25 million dollar business and put one management in place, one team in place. And if you believe all in what you're doing, long term, I think it's better to survive as a group to move forward. And I would have to say that in the last 6 months, every month there's a business that has raised $20 million to have no sales and is going out of business. So is it better to, like we bought Ocean Hugger. We incorporate Ocean Hugger into Conscious, and we use some of their know-how. So they still have share in the business versus closing the business. So we're in the lookout. We're talking to 2 or 3 companies right now. And I think that's the future of the plant-based right now. It's going to be a huge consolidation in the next couple of years.
Yes, I think everyone would agree with that. What are some of the things that you're looking for when you're looking for a company to acquire?
Ideally, some sales, some IP, and something unique that we don't. It's very difficult for the when I talked to the buyer when we launched Conscious, that was the whole idea. KA buyer says finally some innovation in the plant-based that we haven't seen in the last 5 years. There's only so many chicken nugget you need, and so many burgers, and so many tacos, and so So I think bring innovation, bring something unique, but maybe that you don't have the scale, you don't have the sales force, you don't have the network of broker, you don't have the brand that is strong enough. So, a combination of things that, and maybe you have too big an overhead, but if you combine your sales team, your broker, your network, and you reduce those costs, having higher sales, you could become profitable fairly quickly. And I think that's the key. That's the key what we're looking in the company.
Amazing. Thank you. We could talk for hours and hours. I have so many more questions, but I know that we also promised a Q&A to all the amazing folks that have joined. So let's transition to Q&A. I think probably a lot of those questions will be similar topics to what we would have continued talking about. Lane?
Everybody, please stay on of the panelists and Marissa while we go through these questions. We've gotten quite a few from the audience. So we'll start with one that has to do with ingredients. Impossible Heme uses protein to make their plant-based burger red. Alternative dairy companies are going after specific milk proteins. Is there a particular protein or molecule that would boost the taste, texture, or other functionality of alternative seafood?
I would love to find it. Because this is one of the biggest challenge we have is we're using fava bean protein, we're using pea protein, but if we could find a protein that is liquid, that it doesn't change color, that is not red or green, it would be, we've been looking worldwide for a protein like this that it would be fit. Yeah, we haven't found it yet. If somebody has one, please send it to us.
I would say Sonia is working hard to come up with this ingredient made from seaweed. Also, I would say there's definitely potential in these thousands of seaweed species that are currently underused and underutilized in the food industry. And in terms of taste, it's definitely already there. We are currently using it already in terms of umami protein. I think there's some more work to be done, but I'm pretty sure we're going to see some ingredients based on seaweed for alternative seafood soon.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Staying.
I think.
Oh, go ahead, Sonia.
Sorry, no, I was going to say that I think the same, and it's all about playing more with the seaweeds because we haven't explored the ocean. It's like we only have been using fish from the ocean, but there is so much goodness there and we have to explore it more. And then also in our case, we use enzymes, but I'm sure there are other technologies that could be applied to seaweeds, right? So totally agree with that.
Thank you. Staying on the topic of ingredients, this question is actually for Brittany. How is it possible to create such a clean label with just water, cellulose, and flavors? How are the fermentation ingredients declared in the label?
Sure. So how is it possible? It's because of our process, right? Like we use a consortia of microorganisms that are specific to us. And when we inoculate our media with those microbes, what we grow is cellulose. And once we go through the kill step, it completely denatures that cellulose. And so what you're left with is water and cellulose. And then we add our flavor system to that to replicate scallops, for example. And so that's why the ingredient label is so clean, is because with our fermentation process, we're growing cellulose, and that's how it will be labeled on the ingredient deck. And so that's what's really exciting is when we take our products to chefs, they want to know what's in it. And so to be able to say, this is 3 ingredients or our tuna is 5, 6 ingredients, it's really exciting because they're used to plant-based items like Impossible and Beyond, who, when they came to market in the early days, it was just this really long, really lengthy ingredient label, which obviously consumers are more and more educated and are pushing back on. And so to be able to say, we have something really clean label, something that tastes as good as the real thing, that has the texture and mouthfeel and eating experience as conventional seafood, and oh, by the way, is good for your consumer at an attractive price, is just a very compelling story. And I also wanted to touch on the protein question previously. I want to make the argument that we're consuming way too much protein in our diets today. And I think, you know, to Denise's point, you see a slew of protein products on the shelves. And I think what we're really lacking in our diets is fiber. And so because our product does have such a high fiber content, we're actually leaning with that. So we're not talking about protein. We're not talking about omegas in our product. When we go out and present it to chefs or when we're in front of consumers, we're really leaning into the fiber aspect and making a good source of fiber claim on the front of our pack, even though it is for food service and it's in the back of house and consumers aren't going to see that packaging. We think it's really important to start that fiber discussion. And I read something yesterday that was really surprising, but in the US, only 6% of the population are consuming the recommended amount of daily fiber, which is incredibly shocking and concerning. And so I think, again, going back to why we're also targeting this food service channel is when consumers go out to restaurants, they're not thinking about their macros. They're not thinking about, am I going to get the protein and the fat and right, all of the things I need in this meal? It's more of the experience and the taste. And so I think having this benefit of fiber that's naturally found in our product, we're just going to lean more and more into that.
Great, thanks so much. I have a question about nutrition and health. So regarding this topic, how can alternative seafoods match the omega-3 fatty acid content of fish? And also a question around seafood and whether it contains microplastics.
I can start with the last question, if seaweed contains microplastic. So everything we consume by now, today, unfortunately, contains some sort of and form of microplastic, unfortunately. If it's the spinach that you're growing on land, the fish from the oceans or the seaweed from the oceans. The benefit of using seaweed is that compared to a fish, like a tuna fish, it swims 5 to 6 years in the ocean if it's lucky, has a lot of time to accumulate microplastics, heavy metals, etc. The seaweed that we use is harvested after 4 months. So it's one of the fastest growing biomass out there. It's already up to 2 meters long in just 4 months. So it doesn't accumulate as much microplastic as fish. And just like I said initially, everything we consume, unfortunately, does contain some microplastic by now.
That's helpful. I'll also add for the omega portion of the question that GFI is coming out with an omega paper, hopefully this summer. So that may be able to answer some of your questions. And all of our work is completely public facing, open access, no charge. So there's a question for Eve, asking if Conscious uses high moisture extrusion or fermentation.
And none of the above. So Conscious, you know, I always like to say, so I was a chef before, I was a French chef. And the difference between a 3-star restaurant, a 2-star, 1-star, a regular restaurant is the way you put the ingredient together. And Conscious, we actually bring vegetable and we mix them together and we bake them, and that makes the difference in a certain way. So there's no fermentation or extrusion on our process. It's very simple. It's just you need to figure out to do it like a good 3-star restaurant.
You are quite talented, Eve. Very impressive. Okay, I want to move over to a little bit about consumer perceptions. So there's some questions around how we get over that kind of tendency of some consumers to not feel really positive about eating alternative proteins. You know, they may have some idea somewhere that they are not as palatable or not as healthy. What kind of consumer messaging? I think you've touched on this a little bit previously, but if we could just kind of highlight the things you think are most important to be messaging to consumers.
Yeah, I can go with this one. So I think we have to start educating more on consuming, for instance, seaweeds, right? And not only seaweeds, but microalgae, other ingredients, not only the ones that we have been using for seafood alternatives. And so consumers are not used to that, certainly, at least not in Spain, maybe in other regions globally, but not in Spain. And so in our case, we are facing that. So it will require a time of adaptation. And I believe that introducing these new ingredients through traditional products that they are super used to will help, but it will take a time. And then also educating more about how bad traditional seafood is, right? Because it's this thing that we've been repeating, that they have this conception that it's super healthy, and it's not, and we have to make them understand that. So it maybe, I don't know how we could reach them, but we should find a way. I think this is super important.
Yeah, for us at Aqua, I think in terms of the education, we're really leaning with the benefits of our product. So not what it's missing, right? It's like you don't want to play that comparison game, because I feel like if you do that, you have an opportunity to lose, right? It doesn't have the same amount of protein as traditional seafood, or it doesn't have those healthy omegas in it yet. But what it does have is really exciting, right? Clean label, no pesticides, no mercury, no cholesterol, high fiber, and really leading with the good and not the bad, I think is important. And I think, you know, in the past, I've seen a lot of alt protein companies lead with this fear mongering or doom and gloom. And I don't think that's a winning proposition. I really think you have to talk up the benefits of your product and why it's good for consumers, why it's good for the planet. And again, people aren't voting with their dollars on sustainability. I think it's a nice to have, but you can't lead with that. And so I just, yeah, I don't like the comparison game. I really like just leaning with, here's what your product can deliver, right, on taste, texture, these health benefits at a really attractive price point. I think that is more likely to win and get consumers more excited about trying it.
Mhm.
Maybe
Yeah,
just to add one. Oh, sorry.
Go ahead. No, go ahead. Go ahead.
Because Brittany, you mentioned trying. I think that's been one of our secrets or biggest success so far. Actually, getting more exposure of our products and getting as many people to try the products as possible. Because I feel just talking about things usually never get us anywhere. Of course, it's not necessarily like fast scalable to do tastings with everyone, but we make use of conferences, concerts, wherever we can. We put samples in front of people because that's the most convincing way to create this aha moment. You know, why should I eat this, and why is this better? And just one anecdote to underline this: usually when we talk about seaweed, people are like, no, if it's made from seaweed, I don't want to try it, you know, I don't like seaweed. But then you're asking, have you tried seaweed before? And the answer usually is no. So I mean, they have this idea stuck in their head of certain ingredients and certain foods, of alternatives, doesn't matter plant-based or cultivated, but they have to try for themselves to clear that image. So definitely making people try as much and often as possible is one way to go.
Yeah, and I think it's for us, a lot of our success was partnering. Like we're launching with a chain of bagel, and they already have vegan cream cheese, so it's a natural to give sample with our vegan smoked salmon. And you know, quite often people say, okay, so the cream cheese is vegan, but what about the salmon? Like it's real smoked salmon. So no, it's also vegan. So, but the trial and error is critical over here for the consumer to accept a product. And it's demos are expensive, but unfortunately, that's what you have to do.
Excellent insights, everyone. Thank you. I'd like to turn our attention now to some regulatory. issues. Marissa and I were on a call earlier this morning for Future Ocean Foods, and we actually have a question in the chat related to this as well, or a question in the Q&A related to this as well. And it's basically how to deal with problems when you're exporting. And there's a company right now who has had about 3 out of 4 pallets put on hold by the FDA. And this company is exporting into the US. And it's been quite problematic. So I'm wondering if any of you all have tips for navigating regulatory hurdles like these, or any other tips for regulatory issues that may come up during the course of your startup.
You know, it's a hit and miss. The FDA could decide to take a shipment, check it. It's once you're in the country, I think it's a lot easier. But you know, as a startup, I would recommend to send small shipment in the beginning, and you see if there's any issue. I just finished a board meeting that it's a company that does line of frozen product, and the FDA decided to suddenly test all the vitamin on the product. That's never happened to me, but again, and now that's going to delay their shipment by about a month or 2. So I would highly recommend to do some tests, send 10 cases, send 50 cases, then 100 cases to make sure the system, it goes through, and then after that, you can ship big pallet.
Yeah, I would add to that if you are really small and you can have a distributor in this country, that would help a lot, because trying to send it by yourself, it's way more difficult. But if you find someone that already has a structure and knows how to do it and how to deal with the FDA or whatever regulatory system, depending on the country that you go, that would help a lot. But then also wanted to point out one thing, and is that whenever it's possible, it's better to manufacture, I'm not going to say locally, but in each country, because otherwise, if we are being sustainable and trying to do things in a sustainable way, we should keep like that. And I know that this is super difficult, and it can seem utopic in some cases, or at least in the beginning, but at least for the long run, I think we should have keep this in mind.
Mm-hmm.
Excellent, thank you. So for companies that are dealing with CPG products, looking at packaging and how you can achieve sustainable packaging even when you're trying to keep costs lower, do you have any tips around that? I think
sustainable packaging. I mean, we're all trying to use sustainable packaging, but sometimes what is a sustainable packaging cannot be sold frozen. And you know, we talk to packaging manufacturer worldwide, and they say, well, you have to give something. If you want the product to be frozen, it has to be a certain kind of material that resists. So I think it's work in progress, and also there's not a lot of place to process recyclable material. I know maybe in Europe it's better than America, but I know in Canada there's only one place. So the product has to be shipped across the country. So it's a challenging thing.
we have an enormous challenge around this in the US, and I know from a previous life trying to deal with packaging, it can be incredibly difficult. And the thing that shocked me the most is that the little symbol, if it says 0, means it just can't be recycled, but people don't realize that. So interesting approach. And I think we have time for one last question. And this one is there any consumer data on how much consumers care about mercury, antibiotics, and microplastics in seafood? Similar to the rest of the industry, this person has used these as talking points, but it seems to fall flat with chefs and consumers. Is this a real pain point?
You know, it's all part of the discussion, I feel. And you know, being a chef myself, and you know, I own a culinary school in Vancouver, and hospitality industry is going to a very tough time right now with the food costs increased by 30%. We've all been in a restaurant and we see the cost of eating has gone up tremendously. So not a lot of chefs are looking at, is this fish has mercury or not? I think it's an education on the consumer side that we need to do. And unfortunately, with the interest rate, et cetera, right now, the people who are eating organic is less and less. And the buyer from Old Food told me, Eve, the customer right now is shopping with yellow sticker. Whatever's on sales, they're buying. So, it's a long battle, educating the consumer about the benefit of what we have versus what we don't have. But in my bagel shop that I'm selling, I have to be careful. I cannot put real fish to say, well, it's full of mercury, it's full of this, because I'm selling close to it. So, it's a constant dance that you have to have with the buyer, and you need to sell your good attribute and build relationship, basically.
Yeah, I can echo that too. It's not, I don't think it's something chefs care about, or if they do, it's not a huge priority. But what I've noticed in the conversations we've had with chefs is they do care about quality and consistency. And so when you think about traditional seafood, yes, there's microplastics and pesticides and mercury, but there is dwindling supply. There's really inconsistent quality. There's little to no traceability. And I think by having a solution to solve those issues is quite often more important than solving this mercury issue that people don't really care about. They talk about it, but they don't really care about it. And so I think being able to tell a chef, we will deliver a consistent quality product with a reliable supply chain. And oh, by the way, it's coming out of our facility in Chicago. It's local, right, to the restaurants we're working with right now, is a really huge advantage to them trying to source seafood that the supply is dwindling and the cost continues to rise and rise and rise.
Okay, well, I think we're coming up on time. I can't thank all of the panelists enough, and our moderator, Marissa, and also all of the participants. Thank you so much for being here with us. GFI does have a new report out, The State of Global Policy, which is free on our website for anybody interested in what's happening with policy around the world. And we hope that you all have great luck in your startups and companies, and I wish you a very good rest of your day or evening. Thank you so much.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks, Marissa.
Thank